I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is
On this
that is a sad clown.
Proud of my address.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha Pack, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
We've got recent site Q joining us today from the Colosseum. Very, very handsome man wearing his glasses today, and you've probably seen him out there in the gloom. I think we've all just enjoyed getting to come around this man as he's going through life and different struggles and things, but also really appreciate his leadership. And so want to just spend time getting to know Tin Cup. So Tin Cup, glad to have you on. And where we like to start is just with that who EH'd you, and maybe for you, even the kind of precursor interactions with Wait Time, you could share some of that with us. And then what was the first workout like, and how did we land on the name Tin Cup?
Sure. So thanks for having me. Thanks to you, the Plague, and Pony for inviting me. I appreciate it. I've listened to quite a few over the last few months, and I really do enjoy listening to everybody's stories. So hopefully mine can be somewhat enjoyable for others too. But my trademark EH me. So trademark is a neighbor of mine. We see each other at the pool occasionally back when my kids were younger. And he started telling me about F3 at the pool one day, and I was lukewarm to it at first. But I finally, at the end of July of 2019, I decided to go to one, and he told me about it and kind of gave me the overall view of how it would go. And he mentioned that Wait Time was the cue at Cornhusker that Tuesday. And I actually knew Wait Time a little bit from my current position. We worked together when we were planning for the Buffett Cancer Center where I work. So I knew him a little bit then. So I was excited to see him, and I was mentioning to you before, I did not get invited to be a Redwood, even though I think I did know him at the time, but we weren't that close. So I don't hold it against him. So the first post was at Cornhusker. Wait Time was on the queue. I remember carrying sandbags. I remember running more than I thought we were going to run because I had more of a boot camp style in mind for workouts, or how Trademark kind of described it to me. But I remember being tired at the end and covering a lot of ground at the Cornhusker, and it was a good workout. It was different than anything I'd ever done before. And then at the end, there was two FNGs, me and another guy, and I think basically what happened, I was probably pretty spent, so I just kind of gave the general overview of my name, I have two kids, where I work, and nothing was really coming up. I mentioned that I golf, but I wasn't very good. I think Wait Time, I assume he always has like 10 names in his back pocket. So he just went, okay, we'll call it your name's Tin Cup, and let's move on with the workout because I have another guy to name too. So that's where Tin Cup came from. Basically, I like to golf a lot. I'm not very good, but it's something I do quite a bit actually. So it fits pretty well.
Yeah. Oh man, that's Wait Time, what a miss, man. He should have EH'd you as a Redwood. I will have to give him a hard time about that.
Well, to be fair, I probably would, at that time of my life, I probably would have said no. You go through different phases in life, and I could see myself not committing to it back then. So everything works out. So I think it probably better that he didn't ask, because I don't think I would have said yes anyway. So it worked out fine.
Yeah, he probably has a sixth sense where he knows, right? He can
Yeah,
tell.
right, exactly.
What was going on? What do you think changed, like, that made you ready to come out when Trademark asked you?
Well, I mean, I knew Trademark a little bit better, obviously, because he was our neighbor, and he's a very, if you know Trademark, him and I are very similar. We're not like real talkative, and the fact that he was doing it kind of really intrigued me, because he didn't seem like somebody that would like go out and join this group. I mean, I think he would even admit that it probably wouldn't be something you would think he would want to do, but he really enjoyed it. It's like, well, I could use probably a more vigorous exercise routine. I was kind of in the routine where I was just on the treadmill a few days a week. I go to the gym once in a while with weights, but it was nothing that I was committed to. So F3, when I first started it was like, okay, this is good. I'll do this twice a week. And I wasn't that engaged. I listened to a lot of the podcasts, like I mentioned before. Some people jump right in. I'm a slow burn guy. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go a couple times a week. I'm just kind of at my own pace. And then at some point, probably, before the pandemic and then after the pandemic, it kind of kicked up again. I just kind of clicked where it was like, this is something that's more than just working out, and it's good for me. And and it was just helpful in a lot of different ways over the last few years. So I'm so glad that I listened to Trademark and he picked me up on that Tuesday morning.
Yeah. Are you still in touch with Trademark? I feel like he hurt his back and maybe.
Yeah, he was injured. And actually, I reached out to him a few months ago, and he started showing up. And he was when I had my Respect birthday, he showed up to that one. So he's still in the mix, and we see each other. And we've been trying to get a time to get together with our M's and go out, and it hasn't worked out yet. But yeah, we touch base occasionally.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I like Trademark a lot. So, I think you mentioned you had a fitness routine before, and then, kind of slowly got into F3. Do you feel like, have you seen improvements in that first F fitness area, or what's been?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I just was, I was maintaining, I was doing a little bit. I was probably in better shape than a lot of guys my age, but I wasn't in good shape. And you could tell that first 6 weeks when I was doing F3, and that it was hard, and I could see the improvement pretty quickly. And one thing F3 did for me is that I didn't go for about 3 or 4 months when COVID hit. I just didn't feel like it was such a strange time. In hindsight, I would have gone back a lot earlier, but hindsight's 2020. Yeah. So what F3 did for me, it allowed me to like work out harder at home. I kind of had that, I had the foundation of what I could do for F3 workout. So instead of just doing the elliptical a few minutes, I would do a kind of my own boot camp workout in my basement and do it more. And so when I did start going back, it wasn't as much of didn't take it much to get back into it. So I do appreciate that, because that helped kind of keep my sanity, is like knowing that I could like work out on my own and following the group on Twitter. And like I said, hindsight 2020, I probably would have came back a lot earlier, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I'm right there with you. As we, had another baby last year, I've been doing more workouts at home, and it does kind of open your eyes to like, okay, I can do more than just burpees, right? And I can do more than just a run or an elliptical, and and yeah, it's definitely been eye-opening for me too in that area, I think. What about, when you think about, the second F, or that fellowship piece? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that, because starting at 2 days a week, and is that what clicked for you that made you kind of start coming more, or what do you think there?
Yeah, so at first I didn't go to coffee a lot. I was I think at the time my son, who's now in college, was didn't have his license yet. So I was driving my son and my daughter, who's now a sophomore in high school, to school. So in my mind, I didn't have time. I probably could have made time. So I didn't go to coffee a lot for a while. But then when I started to, it was shortly, after like about a year and a half is when I really started getting into it and trying to go to coffee once or twice a week. And I did enjoy the time, because I wasn't pre-running that much. It was a time to connect with everybody. You listen to the podcast, and one common theme is people really enjoy the pre-running and the second F that comes with that. I wasn't doing that at the time, but so going to coffee was a nice way to kind of increase the fellowship. And so yeah, it's just, and like I said, I don't jump in. I'm a slow burn. So I'm like, if you talk to my wife now, she would say that I'm all in with F3, but it took a while to get there, for me anyway. That's just the way I operate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think sometimes, we've heard some guys say, right, like sometimes coffee, you don't have time, right? Or maybe you have to get to work early. And I think it does take a little bit of time, but I think just trying it that first time is pretty eye-opening. I'm curious too, your thoughts on the pre-run. From your perspective, was that intimidating, or was it just a timing thing, or how did you kind of?
A little bit of both. It was intimidating because if you're a 10-minute a mile pace guy, you're always concerned you're going to show up and there's going to be a bunch of thoroughbreds there that are going to be running the 6, 7, 8-minute miles, and it's like that's intimidating. So what I've started doing lately, and along with a number of other F3 guys, is that Oompa started a Clydesdale WhatsApp And so anybody can join it, and it's just very, individuals say, I'm going to be here, and so someone's going to be there about your same pace, or that, and so that's been nice. And so I've been pre-running more lately and getting to and I'm want to continue to do that over the next, in the future. So that's one thing that's nice. So it's like just knowing there's someone there that you're not going to, that you're about your own pace. It's a nice thing. So it's a good thing that it was created, and others that were on board early on too.
Yeah. Yeah, I've really enjoyed watching the Clydesdales and just creating that, run at whatever pace you want.
Right.
I think, I have some guilt or shame about the super fat pre-running pace. I don't know, I think maybe just how we started pre-running, but I'm really glad that guys have found a way to
Well, and the thing is, it's this in your head, right? Because if I showed up and did any pre-run, someone would run with me and it would be fine.
Yeah.
But it's just in your head that, you don't want to be that guy that kind of slows the group down, because everybody wants to come out and get their workout in. But in reality, 95% of the guys are fine running a little bit slower on any certain morning if it means picking up the 6. So
Yep.
you just, but in the back of your head, you don't necessarily want to be the 6. You want to be that guy. But I would be more comfortable now showing up. But like when you're new, it is intimidating for sure.
Yeah. So for somebody that might be listening that is wanting to get into pre-running, what's the best way to start that? You think, is it jump on that WhatsApp chat?
I would say, yeah, just ask someone to invite you to the Clydesdale WhatsApp, and there's someone posting, or say they're posting a number of sites every day, so there's always an option about every morning, it seems like. And there's even when it's cold, like it has been the last week, there's been a number of people. I think we had 6 last Friday at the Spike, and it was cold. So that would be a good way to start. And I think more people are like, we tell people about it, they're more interested in coming out, just because it's more of a, it's more of a warm up than it is, a beat down, but it really gets you ready. You're going to have time to, at least be able to catch your breath before the beat down starts.
Yeah. I feel like I've talked to a few guys that are they're doing a run like 5 days a week now,
Yeah.
Oompa.
There's a number of guys they're hitting hard for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about like some of the other second F, like happy hour, lunch, shield lock, Q source? Have you had a chance to participate in any of that stuff?
Yeah, I've been hit happy hour occasionally. The lunch is a little bit more difficult for me to get to generally. But happy hour I'll try to go to if some of the guys are meeting. The one thing, it's not necessarily second, it's probably third F. The one thing I had never done in like 30 years was give blood. And then I started giving blood because of F3. There was a sign up. So that's, it's I know that's part of the third F, but that's something that F3 totally, if it wasn't for F3, I still wouldn't have given blood, because I had a bad experience early on. They'd have a hard time finding my veins. So I said, well, I'll give it one more shot. And every time I've gone in, it's been fine. So it's like one of those things that I just need a little motivation to sign up.
Yeah. Well, and that's, it's, maybe technically third F, but there's a second F component.
Yeah, for sure.
There's, guys competing for the time, who's got the fastest lead time. And yeah, I love that. What about Q source or shield lock or any of that stuff? Have you?
I don't have a shield lock, but not an official one. There's a number of guys that I know I can lean on and I'll reach out to, and I have in the past, but not an official shield lock. As far as Q source, when I post to Paradise, I try to go. I don't post to Paradise a lot. Wednesday used to be kind of my rest day, because I like to have a day in between. But I do like posting there when I can. So I've been to a few Q sources, and I appreciate the conversation, and I always appreciate whoever's leading it. It just seems like that's kind of above and beyond to take that commitment and lead the discussion. It's one thing to go to coffee, lead a beat down, and then go to coffee, but then to commit to doing homework and having to lead the discussion afterwards always impresses me. It's like it's always a good thing to participate in, I think.
Yeah, for sure. What as you're thinking about kind of in this realm of we'll call it like sad clown syndrome or male loneliness, or looking at all the different apps. How do you feel as far as your relationships with other men now compared to maybe before F3?
Yeah, what So I was probably a little bit of a sad clown. I know there's been times, not like in hindsight, there's probably times where it kind of varied depending on, what was going on. I think what F3, what's really incredible about it, or really kind of, I've really come to appreciate, is that you form relationships with men that you would never probably meet. They're not necessarily parents of your kids, right? And they're different age groups. They're maybe 10 years older or younger. So so you're able to like talk to them about their experiences, and they can ask you about your experiences if you're if you're a little bit older like I am. One thing with me, and it's pretty well known, is I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in April of this year, and I didn't tell anybody for a while just because I just didn't feel like sharing it. I was having a hard time talking about it. It took me a while to come, like I said, it's back to that slow burn. But what it's done for me recently anyway is that just the positive energy that I get from the group. And if you would have told me 3 years ago that I would I have men like praying for me, I would say I don't know how comfortable that would make me feel, but now I'm very much appreciative of that, and it's just been a really good experience. It's helped me a lot. I mean, at first, even before I told people, it motivated me to get up out of the morning and do a hard workout, and then now it just kind of motivates me to keep coming to see everybody, and I'm so thankful for how it's helped me and over the last few months, especially.
Yeah, man. And I appreciate you sharing that with, just here, but also just with guys through different workouts and things. I know I've been actively praying for you. And I think curious, one of the things we're trying to do here, right, is create those relationships. So, F3 references like the flux, right, or just life on life's terms. And, as you go through that, it's definitely a spiritual journey, right? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty and things that you're going through, but talk to me about that third F, then kind of the faith piece. I mean, you mentioned giving blood, but just maybe even more on the spiritual side. What's been your journey there?
Sure. So, I've heard other guys mention this on the podcast, is that, F3 really acts as my church, or it's not a religion, but it's my church. It gives me an outlet where I pray every day. We don't necessarily go to church regularly. But I do believe in the power of positive energy. I believe in the power of prayer more so now because of F3 than I probably ever have, and also just because of my situation I'm in now. So I would describe myself as a man of faith, but I would just kind of leave it at that. And I think, and what's nice about the podcast is that I think I've heard other members of F3 say similar things, and and it's fine. It's like we're all men of faith, but it just doesn't really, the details behind that isn't really important to me. It's just like we're men of faith and we're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, and there's so much positive energy, in that kind of spiritual realm with the group. I mean, you just feel it when we're together in the morning, and that's one of my favorite things by far. I'm curious your thoughts too on. So you mentioned it was difficult for you to talk about, and that could create some issues too, right? Some mental battle kind of stuff.
Sure.
We have these things, we don't talk about them. So did the group help? I mean, do you feel like being a part of the group helped you kind of get out of that comfort zone and share, or how did that end up?
That's a really good question. So, and I've thought about this a lot. So April, I was diagnosed. I didn't want to tell anybody because my son was graduating from high school in May. So we told the family in April, my parents, the kids, but I didn't want to tell a lot of friends because I just kind of wanted to wait till the graduation was over. We told my immediate family. And then after that, I just didn't want to tell anybody. I had a hard time talking about it. But I will say, to your point, is I kind of felt a little guilt, right? Because we had go to the workout every morning. People were praying, they were asking for prayers. I had this thing kind of pretty heavy on my shoulders. I just wasn't ready to mention at the end of a workout. Plus, in my mind, and this probably isn't fair, but it's like it didn't seem fair for if somebody's cueing a workout and for all of a sudden me to say at the end of it, oh, I have cancer. It's like, well, what where do we go from there? I mean, it's kind of sidelines. It kind of, takes everything in a different direction as far as the COT is concerned. So I use that as an excuse. So interestingly enough, I didn't turn 50 till October, but I've been going to the Respect pop-up workouts because Wait Time invited me when I was about 49 and a half. So he asked me to queue in July, the end of July at the Respect pop-up. And, that felt kind of right. It's like, okay, there's men all in their 50s, they're kind of probably something that, can almost be a PS, public service announcement for them because they maybe need to think about this too. So I had 2 COTs prepared for that day. One that was pretty easy and benign, and one was a part of my COT I started writing when I was diagnosed. So when I was diagnosed, I started writing a COT, just kind of helped me get my head around it.
Mm.
It ended up being about 5-6 pages, single spaced.
Wow.
So I didn't share the whole thing, but I shared a part of it, or I had a part of it prepared for that morning when I queued at the Respect pop-up at the end of July. And I didn't know if I was going to share it, honestly, until I was in the middle and I was surrounded by the men. I knew it was a safe place where I could be vulnerable, I could be emotional, and it was very much, but it was also cathartic. It really helped me. It was I had a lot of steps in my kind of getting my head around this, and that was a major one as far as able to share it with the F3 men, because it was tough for me to talk about it because, it would have, if my diagnosis would have just been, okay, you have to get your prostate removed, then everybody would have known, right? Because I would have been laid up for a number of weeks. I would just would have told people, but what my treatment plan is hormone therapy and radiation, which I finished, but it wasn't really, until I started the radiation, it was just kind of waiting. So I was able to kind of, keep it to myself, at least in the 3 circles.
Yeah, man, I liked your approach about processing that event, major life event, by writing it down. Are you, where does that come from for you? Are you a writer naturally, or that you're
Not even, no. So if it wasn't for F3, that's something I would have never done.
okay?
I just started thinking, shortly after I was diagnosed, I just thought to myself, someday I'm going to put this in a COT. So I might as well start documenting it now. And I've changed it a lot, because at first I thought maybe I kind of assumed this was going to be my treatment plan. And the more we found out that it, because long story short, and I'm pretty open to sharing about this, is that, the PET scan indicated that there was cancer in about 12 lymph nodes in my pelvic area.
Okay.
Because of that, surgery really wasn't an option. So at the end of August, I had high dose radiation in the OR room directly into the prostate and my cervical vesicle. And then after that, I had 30 days of external radiation treatments. And so that's why I did tell people, because I knew I was going to miss at least one beat down at the Colosseum where I was the site queue. I told a few people there, and I did share the 4-page COT with a few people early on, just because I felt comfortable doing that. But it wasn't something I necessarily wanted to publish on to the whole world. But I took parts of that at the Respect pop-up at the end of July, and it was like I said, it was just a day that kind of allowed me to kind of start telling people, and eventually I became a lot more comfortable and a lot more able really to talk about it, because I just, for whatever reason, I just had a hard time discussing it early on.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And, you think like a group of guys, right? And we all know kind of where the prostate is at, right? From an anatomical location. And, so then I think you're kind of like, how do we talk about this? But maybe that's one of the
Right.
things, right? As men, we got to figure out, because these are important things. So I wanted to clarify something you said too, because I think you said you're done with all of the treatment. Is that correct? And then your next step is really get another PET scan and kind of see where things are.
More or less. So I've done the radiation treatments I'm done with. I'm still on hormone therapy. My treatment plan is 2 years of hormone therapy, which started about 6 months ago. So something I didn't know, I work for the cancer center at UNMC, and I didn't even know this. Prostate cancer feeds on testosterone. So for 2 years, I'm on hormone therapy that basically will knock down my testosterone. But it also keeps the cancer cells from growing if there's any left. The hope is, and this is my mindset, is that the radiation took care of it and there actually isn't any left. But just to be safe, they want to keep me on it the physicians want to keep me on it for 2 years before they take me off it. And then they'll just monitor my PSA. And then eventually, if it stays low, it should be good, but eventually I'll probably have a scan of some type. But right now, that's the biggest thing now is like, not having testosterone does a lot of things, but one is it lowers your energy. But exercise, helps, right? I mean, it does help. I mean, so I'm even more motivated, I think, most days to get up and to get out because it's kind of part of my treatment plan, exercising. And so I do find F3 as I'm grateful and thankful that it's in my life during this time period. I think it's really helped. I'm getting more out of it, honestly, than I'm giving back, even though I'm happy to give back.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. I mean, to me, like it's challenging to always push yourself to go work out alone, and just knowing other guys are out there and that you can show up, and that is a huge motivator for me, definitely. So if you had a chance to give a public service announcement for other men, what would you say, or what should we all be thinking of to?
Well, it's specifically for prostate cancer. So the rules and the guidelines have changed a little bit over the last few years, and they were saying basically don't get a PSA until you're 50, and then I think they actually did change it. I would say have a conversation with your physician about getting prostate examination, a DRE, a digital rectal exam, and then maybe a PSA. I mean, maybe not everybody necessarily needs to have them, but I will say this is that I didn't have one because I have zero history of cancer in my family, immediate family. Prostate cancer is in my family, but it's nothing like you would say you should check them out. So, if I would have had a PSA, 2 or 3 years earlier, it probably would have been a whole different type of treatment for me. And I didn't, because when I had it, the normal range is less than 4 for a PSA. My first one I ever had was 45.
Oh, wow.
So it's like right when they saw it, it's like, we need to do something about this. So I'd say have a conversation, because I mean, if I would have just went to my doctor and said, maybe I should have a examination, he probably said, sure. But, I wasn't pushing for it, because if you know what a DRE is, why would you, right? Why would you ask for that?
Yeah, for sure. And so for the guys that are like, I'm not asking for that, I mean, it sounds like as a preventative measure, right? You
should think about it. Yeah, for sure. Especially because like with me, it would have been a no brainer. If it's really, really high, then you need to follow up. I mean, the question is when it's just a little bit high, but everybody's different. But like I said, statistically, I should not have prostate cancer unless I was exposed to something I don't know about. It's not something I would ever thought I would be diagnosed with cancer before I was 50. No way.
Yeah. I do. So anything, just, I mean, in that space, obviously we continue prayers for that, for you. I mean, do you still deal with some anxiety or stress around this, or you seem pretty, like you're dealing with it pretty well?
It's compared to how I was, 6 months ago, I think I'm doing okay. I have a great support system, not only at F3, but my wife is outstanding. And she has really been the rock behind this whole process of ours. And we have friends and family that outside of F3 that have just been great. I mean, like anybody else, some days are better than others. There have been different days when you kind of get lost in your thoughts and think about why am I in this place and what's going to happen. But, overall, this is, and this is another thing F3 did for me, which is probably I could keep going on and on. It helped me remain positive. I can list a lot of things where I'm pretty lucky. I'm pretty lucky that I work for a cancer center and I have access to care and I have access to expert guidance. I'm pretty lucky that I haven't had really any health problems for 50 years. So this is it. I mean, it's not great, but I've been pretty healthy for 50 years. I'm lucky because, now my son will he'll be he'll do preventative care early on. I mean, so it should never really affect him. So I have health insurance. I have access to care. I mean, compared to a lot of people, I'm pretty lucky. And if it wasn't for F3, I don't know this for sure, I probably wouldn't have been as positive. So I just try to remind myself that all things considered, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, man. And I really appreciate your positivity. I look at guys like you and, even like Waffle House or guys that have gone through, these life-changing circumstances, and like I see why, whatever higher power you believe in would maybe allow that, right? Because you're the example you are to other men, and what we can learn from you and your experience is just, it's phenomenal. So the other thing I get that I'm picking up on, if I'm following
Thank
correctly.
you for that. I appreciate that. I feel like I will just, I don't want to interrupt you, but I do feel like, 90% of the guys have to be this way. And I think about, pit stop and what he's going through with his M. And I think in that way, I'm lucky because it's me and it's not my M. So, I mean, everybody's dealing with something is what I keep telling myself, right? Everybody's dealing with something. This is just happens to be out there for me because I chose for it to be. But everybody's dealing with something. And my struggle, though, it's not insignificant. I don't know if it's much different than what 90% of the people go through. So I think it's just, you just gotta, it's day by day, right? It's just day by day.
Yeah, where I was going, so this happened in your 49th year, right? So before, okay, so then, and then you turned 50, and how did that go?
My 50th, I texted Oompa and said, I noticed my 50th birthday was on a Friday. So I said, shortly after he got the flag, I said, I'd like to do my respect beatdown on the Friday the 21st. It was early enough on, I don't think anybody even knew I had cancer at that time. So I didn't know where I was going to be out of my treatment plan. So it turns out on that Friday, the 24th, was like the last full week of radiation therapy. And in addition to that, about a month prior, I hurt my knee. So I was kind of hobbling around. And so I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. I knew I had a cortisone injection the day before my 50th birthday. And I knew I'd be like 28 days into 30 radiation treatments. The last week of radiation turned out not being as bad as I thought because they changed the dosage a little bit, so it wasn't quite as intense. So that the Friday of my 50th birthday, I felt the best I'd felt in probably 50 days. And it was just a great day. I mean, Oompa had advertised the respect beatdown significantly. So I think there was about over 40 guys there. I felt good. The cortisone shot worked. My knee felt good. I was able to run without having any pain. It was just a really good day. I ended up going to the Casual Pint for a happy hour, meet a few guys there. Quick story, my daughter has two friends that worked at the ice cream store shop right across from Casual Pint, and they saw me, and I turned around and they brought me like a little cup of ice cream, and then the whole F3 group broke out into happy birthday when we were sitting outside on the patio. And then they said happy birthday Tin Cup, which has confused my daughter's friends. They had no idea what they were talking about, but it was just a really good day. My wife and I ended up walking to our favorite restaurant, and it was just a really good day. So I think your question was how did it come about? It's like I planned on leading a beatdown on my 50th birthday just because I was, it seems like kind of a milestone, especially in F3, and it turned out to be about as best as I could hope for.
Wow, that's a great story. I love that. Isn't it funny when people that don't know our nicknames, they hear it,
Yeah.
they're like, what?
What's going on? Yeah. And then when you're taking when you're picking up your kids' friends to carpooling, and it's like, why does your dad have a shovel in the back of his car? And it's like, well, there's a long story. We can get into that later.
Well, hey, let's talk about that. So obviously we're trying to build leaders, right, for the community, and I think you took the shovel flag at Colosseum from Stella, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and then led that site for a year, and recently handed off to our man Honeymaid. So talk to us about just your experience leading that site, and because you were leading that site through all of this, right? I mean,
yeah. So I took over in I think it was October, and so how it happened is one day I think it was after I was working out the Trident, maybe I went to the Trident, and Todd approached me and said, we're thinking your name keeps coming up as leading a site, and he mentioned the Colosseum. And I mentioned this when I passed the flag, is like when I knew eventually I could ask, because this time I'm posting pretty regularly. I'd been with the group for over 2 years, and I'd never been a side queue. So it's like I knew eventually I'd be asked, because again, it kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. It's very I don't necessarily jump head first in anything. And he said, what about the Colosseum? Would you be interested? And it's like, I have to say yes. And I mentioned this when I passed the flag. It's like, I owe it to F3. I have to say yes. And this was before I knew I was diagnosed with cancer. So I said, sure. And Stella also approached me also. We talked about it. It's like, yeah, it's Tuesday. I always post there when I can. At that time, my son was a senior in high school there. My daughter was an incoming freshman. So sometimes the first summer that I was the PsyQ there, my son would go to football practice. I'd see him in the morning, and now my daughter still goes to cheer early in the morning, so I get to do. So it was a really good fit for me to be there. Samples was taking over the battlefield about the same time, so it was we could like work together if needed to kind of cover each other. So yeah, it was great. And what I did, and I don't know if it's the right philosophy, but my philosophy was, and because I'd been going for a long time, I just started writing a list of names of guys I wanted to invite to Q. I didn't necessarily have any, just guys I'd been to their beatdowns or I knew them. And some of the guys as we've grown, I didn't see as much because, they always, if they were from Sarpy County or Millard, they were able to, go to sites that are closer. So I ended up with like a list of 90 names. And I think we had, in about 14 months, we had about over 50 guys queue. And all I would do is I would just text them, say, do you want to queue? And they would reply and say yes. It was pretty easy, actually. I mean, no one ever said no. You just had to find a date that worked, and it was great. And then when it was time for me to pass the flag, I asked Stella and Safe Ride first, since they're the previous IQs, if they had any ideas. And Honeymaid's name just was a common between both of them because he posted regularly there. He really accelerated. And when I texted him, I talked to him a little bit about it after a beatdown, and I texted him and said, okay, do you want to do it? And I realized the last time I texted him, it was the first day he posted when he was FNG at the Colosseum. So I tried to text FNGs after they post to say, welcome, let me know if you have any questions. And, he said yes right away, and he's going to do a great job. He's much younger than me, so Twitter will not be a problem. He won't have to learn that like I did. And he's just has a lot of energy, and he's accelerating. He's actually a West Sider. He went to high school there. My kids, I'm not from Omaha, but my kids went to school there. So it's just a great fit, I think.
Yeah. Man, there's so much to unpack there. And, the Colosseum, is really one of our, kind of district staples sites, right? I mean, I think, gosh, if I remember right, I think Colosseum would have been the second Tuesday site that we launched after the Cornhusker.
Yeah, it was Cornhusker, and there's one out west. Is it
Wild Kingdom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So what do you think about, just from like a leadership perspective? I mean, how did being the site Q help, or did it help just with leadership, maybe at work or at home or in the community? Anything there?
Sure. I mean, it may definitely help make me more accountable, at least in that 3. And I knew I had to be there on Tuesday. And I think it made me, there's a few times I would step in, and COVID was still kind of jumping up. So a few people had to back out because of COVID. So there's few times I had to jump in sort of last minute to queue. And it just became easier to queue too, because it's like, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then, knowing you're doing the last minute and putting something together it really helped. I think it's helped my, comfort level of speaking in front of people. Just because I do, when you do it all the time, either when you're queuing or just a site queue, you're trying to welcome everybody, and the people may look to you for questions potentially, at least about that site. But no, it has helped, and I have it just kind of helped me grow, I think, and I enjoyed being the site queue at the Colosseum. I mean, it's a great place to be a site queue in the winter, especially the lights are on. The field is in pretty good shape. So it's for individuals that are a little bit older like me that may not have the best eyesight and the best knees, it's a nice option, especially in the wintertime.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, I think it was like a Greek freak was leading a workout there one time, and we were in the front of the church right next door. And I remember, there weren't very many of us, but I remember you being there with you, and it was, cold and windy. And
right. So that was, it was a week after the polar challenge, polar bear challenge. And I didn't do the polar bear challenge. I posted a few times a week, but it's like, I'm not posting 6 times in negative whatever degree weather. Well, it got me back because I volunteered to queue at the Colosseum. I had told Stella, put me on the queue for when you need me in February. And it turned out it was like the coldest day of the year. I mean, I showed up to the parking lot and it was my car said a -15. So I don't know what the real feel was. I mean, at that point, who cares, right? If it's negative, if your car says a -15, it's just really cold.
Yeah.
And Stella tells that story. I think he told it when he gave me the shovel, and I've told that story to people that aren't in F3, and they just look at you like you are insane. I mean, why would you? Was anybody there? It's like, yeah, there were 7 of us out there, and I think my phone froze, and I couldn't even take the video, and I think you had to take the video. It was like, what are we doing? But it was, that was a great day.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, lots of memories like that. I am curious too, for you, as you're thinking about, you had mentioned before we started, you're going on vacation with the family, really focusing in on your kids and developing those relationships there. What, as we're thinking about praying for you, what, we see out in the gloom, what should we be encouraging you on?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I mentioned, since I'm on hormone therapy, my energy level isn't like, I can tell that my endurance isn't like what it was a year ago. And I know it's probably going to stay that way if not get a little worse. So, just, any motivation to keep me going out, because I don't see myself losing that motivation, but you never know. And, when I think about I appreciate the prayers for me, but I also think about the prayers for not only my family, but, significant others of people. It's a lot of, it's stressful because especially early on when you're diagnosed with cancer, there's a lot of unknowns for, what it's going to look like. So, I mean, having a great support system like I have with my family, and my kids are old enough that they're, I talk to them like adults, probably sometimes more so than I should, but I mean, it has helped my relationship, with my quite a bit. I mean, we had a great relationship before, but I think it just brought us closer together, and same with my kids. And so, when I gave my COT at my birthday Q, early on after I was diagnosed, my wife sent me a message, and I think she actually got it from a tea bag, and it said, because she drinks a lot of green tea, it said, accept the challenge you are facing. It may become your greatest gift. And I have that on my wall in my office. And I try to remind myself that every day is like, this is what it is, but how I can maybe use this to be a better person, a better husband. I need to think about that because, there's nothing I can do to change what I'm going through and what my family's going through right now. But, I can try to make it as good as possible or make the best of it. Let's just say that.
Ah, man, I love that. And that's a really good reminder for all of us, whatever challenge we're going through. I think, yeah, and that's been, my experience, I think too, is that my greatest challenge is often ends up being the best part of my day or my week or,
Right.
So I really appreciate you sharing that. Anything else that you feel like, you've been in F3 3.5.
It was 3 years in July, so it's going on 3.5 in January. Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's been fun to watch, how many sites have popped up, and the growth. And it's bittersweet. It's all, you go from being, even when I started, it was fairly small to being this, a large operation. But overall, there's nothing bad about having more guys in F3. I mean, there's the good is just to have more people involved and being all over the county, as well as hopefully into other county, into Lincoln as it grows. So I think that as a side Q, what I could have done better is I probably could have tried to, the newer guys, besides just texting that one time, I probably could have tried to encourage them more to BQ, and I wasn't very good about that. I think it has a lot to do with how I am. I don't really want people pushing me to do stuff. I want to do it on my own pace. And that's what I love about F3. I mean, you can kind of set your own pace of what type of leadership trajectory you want. And mine is, nice and easy and slow until I'm pretty comfortable. And that's how, and it worked just fine for me. And so I didn't push guys to DQ, but I probably could have been a little better communicator with the newer guys as they came out, just to like make sure, just keeping in touch with them. Because there'd been a number of FNGs that posted at the Colosseum that we maybe never saw again. And maybe if I would have sent them another text here and there, or reached out to whoever EH'd them and said, maybe how are they doing? But overall, I think that, you know, I think the group is, I mean, considering it's just a grassroots organization, right? I mean, no, everybody's doing this volunteer. It's pretty impressive. And when you explain it to people, you can kind of see that have no idea what you're talking about before you start talking about F3. They kind of see it's like, how is this working? Because there's, you know, no one's getting paid. There's really no incentive monetarily at all. It's just people wanting to be a part of it and wanting to contribute. It's so I don't know how you improve that. I mean, just because it's just really everybody gets to do what they can put into as much as you want.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. For me, I've always wanted to be useful, and I feel like the group, like there's 100 different ways I could be useful to my community through the group, and I think a lot of us want to help. You know, it's really cool, especially this time of year, watching guys with the canned food drive and
right.
What's going on. What about I missed your favorite and least favorite exercise. What makes that?
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked this one. I actually thought about this a little bit, and the answer is the same to both, but just a little bit different. So I think a burpee needs to be part of most beat downs.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should go above 5. So 5 or less burpees is my favorite exercise. 10 or more burpees is my least favorite exercise, because I feel like after you get to 11 or 12, you're just kind of, your form gets way off and you're struggling to get through. At least for me, guys in better shape like you, probably maybe their numbers is different. But so I like 5 or less is my favorite. Not because I necessarily like them, but you know, I hadn't done a burpee before Cornhusker Handicap when I posted for the first time when wait time was queuing for 30 years. I forgot what they were. And then you start doing them for the first time after that long, and you think this isn't that bad, but you get to about 6 or 7, it's like, this is difficult.
Yeah.
And but so it's got to be, it's a great endurance and cardiovascular exercise that you can do in your basement.
Yeah, I love that. That's the first. We haven't had anybody shoot the same exercise but different rep count. So
I could come up with other ones I don't like anything upside down against the wall. I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah. Well, you're a tall guy too, right? You're what, 6'4", 6'5"?
I'm about 6'3", and I weigh more than most. So yeah, that's a lot of weight on your elbows and shoulders.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, Tin Cup, this has been awesome, and I just, I hope you know, I mean, yeah, and I think you feel this, but you got a lot of guys rooting for you, but I think also a lot of guys that are learning from you as an example, and just watching, how you're approaching this scenario, right? Because there's no telling who in our group will have something else similar come out. So I appreciate you setting a good example of positivity and gratitude, and just how do we learn from it and share the story. So super grateful for you and just who you are as a man. It's really cool just to be a part of it with you.
Right, I appreciate that. And like I said, I mean, a lot of my attitude I owe to the F3. I think I'm getting way more out of it than I'm giving back. So, but I appreciate those words. I appreciate you and Pony putting together this podcast. Like I said before, I've listened to all of them. I kind of binge listened to them starting a few months ago, and it was helpful just to hear how not only how people got their name and their first workout and their least favorite exercise, but how people approach F3, and it's been a good experience for me to listen to them. But thank you, I appreciate that. But like I said, everybody has things going on in their lives. This is just mine, and you just gotta try to make the best of it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's do Name-A-Rama.
Okay.
I'll start us off here. Brandon Playhardy, 36, The Plague.
The Plague. Matt Winfrey, 50, Tin Cup.
Tin Cup, respect. Do you have a call sign or a?
You know what? I don't. I think Swiper might have said once in a while I'm around him and he says a line from Tin Cup, like "Give me a ball." I've always thought 4 would be a good one because I'm usually hitting it wayward. I'm out of bounds, but I don't have a call sign.
Okay, well we should start that. We'll start saying 4 afterward. Hey, thanks for your time today, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.